Welcome to the No Name Brand Podcast. My name is Sashka Hanarappel, actress, singer, dancer, turned brand marketing, sales, and advertising strategist who brands your soul. And each week I bring you an inspiring person or message to help you discover your underdog, turn up your leadership notches, challenge the status quo, because you're fast and furious with a powerful message to share with the world. Thank you for taking time out with me today, and without further ado, let's get our creative and wisdom juices flowing. Konnichiwa, my lovely visionaries. How are you this fine day? It's so good to have you here with us again. And I'm super excited about today's episode. And yes, I know I'm always saying how super excited I am. But I am. Our next guest is pretty rare. And what she does lifts my ambitions to pursue my talents as a speaker even more. Now, our next guest is a hopeless romantic. She loves food. In fact, a lifelong friend said that it was cheaper to buy our guest a new wardrobe of clothes than to keep her fed. A woman after my own heart. Yes, please. She can speak 2 languages, loves good jokes. I don't get them, but I love good jokes too. And is a comedy lover. A woman after my heart. Super passionate about offering support and training to speakers to help them commercialize their speaking business. Because yes, we need to hear the message. Her tenacity is much like Tom from Tom and Jerry. She never gives up because she just knows that there is always the prize on the other side and that you just have to keep going. So with over 20 plus years in the business of speaking, our next guest knows her way around the hiring of speakers and establishing yourself as a speaker. And for those who listened in on the episode with Minnie von Mellencrot-Grant, I have to pronounce that properly, around becoming a TED speaker, you'll not want to miss the words of wisdom being dropped by our next guest to accelerate you in the direction of a career as a speaker. So, without further ado, it's time to tune our voices, la la la, and here's ding, and welcome the one and only Maria Franzoni. Hello, Maria.
Woo! Gosh, I want to listen to this now. This sounds great. I'm just going to sit back and listen to this interview. It sounds fantastic.
Oh, I need you on the other side. So to kick this episode off, I have a very important question as the first. What is your favorite food or dish? Is that even possible? And what languages do you speak and why?
Oh, do you know, it's very difficult to narrow down favourite food, but
Yes.
Probably if somebody said to me, you're never allowed to eat this ever again, I would be really upset, is ice cream.
Really?
I love ice cream. I am an ice creamaholic.
Oh,
Absolutely.
wow.
Yeah.
What, water ice creams or creamy ice creams?
Creamy ice creams.
Oh
And
my
they
God.
they're my diet buster. It's not good. It's not good. I mean, I can sit and eat an entire tub of ice cream, not because I'm unhappy, but because I'm loving it.
Oh my God, that is so cool. I
It's
love
terrible.
that. Never heard of that before.
Really. My favorite flavor is coffee ice cream.
How interesting. My daughter's coffee yogurt. Actually, I like frozen yogurt, but yeah, I'm not a fan. Oh, pretty interesting. And what languages do you speak?
I speak Italian. I speak English. I speak profane. My nickname in the office is Potty Mouth. Yeah, I'm working on that.
Why?
Stop doing it. I speak a bit of French. Now, I'm working on it that I don't want to be a potty mouth anymore. I don't think it's a good thing. But I also speak a bit of French. I studied French to A-level. It's not brilliant. I should have carried on with it. But yeah, I'm fluent in Italian and English. My English is pretty good.
Well, it's good. We'll have this conversation in English. Italian, no comprendo italiano. Je ne parle anglais. Je parle anglais. No, je ne parle. Anyway, how in the world did you get into speaking and the business of it, and what enticed you?
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't tend to speak myself. I'm not a speaker. I'm normally behind the scenes. Every now and then I will go speaking about speaking, but it's not because I'm a speaker. How did I get into it? Completely by accident. I saw a very cryptic advert. It basically said, are you able to negotiate at senior level? And at that time, I had just come out of having been a management consultant where I'd sat opposite some top CEOs and top boards and told them what was wrong with their business. So I thought, yeah, I can negotiate at senior level. And of course, what they were talking about, it was a speaker bureau, and they were talking about being able to not be fazed by talking to some of the amazing people that we end up dealing with, you know, really senior, really huge world leaders, first man on the moon, all sorts of people, and not to be fazed by talking to them about an event and maybe negotiating with them. Would you do this and would you do that? Would you consider this? So I didn't know when I applied for it, but the negotiation bit appealed to me. And actually, I love the negotiation part of any deal. I really enjoy that.
Oh, that's incredible. Are you negotiating a lot when you negotiating for your speakers? Because you have a speaker bureau, right?
Yeah, you are. You're negotiating basically on everything. You're negotiating on what the client wants that speaker to do. Many times it's all acceptable. It's all absolutely acceptable. It becomes a negotiation when they want to perhaps not pay the correct fee and they have a limitation in what they can pay, or when it's out of the normal comfort zone of the speaker and they're asking them to do something slightly different or to stay a bit longer than they normally would. So yeah, the whole thing, the whole contract is a negotiation. The whole deal is a negotiation, if you like.
Because it's 20 plus years that you've had in the speaking business in terms of business, your speakers and getting their business. Or it's more about the corporates or the companies coming to you and you having speakers on file on who's going to be going where. How does your mind work when a company comes and they're going, I want the speaker, but I don't want to pay this? How are you negotiating over there? How did you get that confidence? Or did you always have it?
I've always been quite confident, to be honest. I think coming from Italian families, anybody who's Italian out there, your confidence is built up by your parents. They're pretty good. And they always have huge expectations for you. So you sort of believe that their expectations are realistic and go for it. But I've always worked very hard, and I'd had 3 different careers before I went into the speaking business. So I understand business, and business is the thing I love. I love it. And I've always got at least 5 business books on the go at any one time. So that for me is really interesting. I think I've forgotten the question. How did I have the confidence to negotiate? Was that the question?
Yeah. When companies are coming to you, but they're not willing to pay the price,
or
you have your speakers on file, how do you allocate who to who?
Yeah. Do you know what? It becomes an instinct after a while. It's like a matchmaking service. And when you're listening to the client and you understand their audience, you understand their objectives, you understand what they want to achieve, you immediately come up with sort of that match. You can think, and so what goes wrong then is if that match isn't financially a viable one, because say the speaker's 20 grand and they've got 5 grand. So then you've got to think, well, how can I make this work in any way? Is there any way I can make it work? Or do I then have to offer them an alternative? When clients come to me, I try not to go into the names straight away. I try not to say it should be this person or that person. I try to match the profile. So if someone comes to me and says, look, we really want to do something different on communication because people aren't getting it or they've got issues with listening. So instead of me saying, oh, you want a communications expert or you want this kind of, I'll sort of start trying to think, well, what jobs, what areas have to really listen? Who are the types of profiles? What are the profiles where you have to be a top listener? Then I'll start getting ideas that way. And then the client go, oh, I hadn't thought of doing that. So for example, immediately on that example, I'll be thinking of, a hostage negotiator has to be a really good listener because they've got to really understand what's going on, things like that. So I try not to come up with a name straight away, but a profile, because then you've got a choice. If you've got more than one speaker that fits that profile, you will have one that is on one price bracket and one on another price bracket. If you immediately go to a name, you're cornered. I suppose I learned that from 2 areas. One, I started in retail, and in our retail training, when we were taught about how to sell, we were always told never narrow it down, because if you narrow it down, and you don't have it, you're stuck. So that's one thing. But then I worked with one of the top guys in this industry who sadly has passed away, and he trained me. I joined his bureau, the guy called Alex Krywald, brilliant. And this was the method he taught everybody that went through with him and trained with him was don't go straight for a name. Come up with the best profile to fit and come up with different profiles so that you can really expand the brief and be a bit clever about it rather than narrowing your options. And so that's great fun doing it that way. So I really enjoy that. I love doing the suggestions, the matchmaking. It's the best bit. If they come to me with a name, they've taken away that bit from me, really.
It's actually really interesting because in mindset, the strategy is to always chunk down until you get to the solution. So you're chunking down the problem, but you're taking the problem and chunking up.
Yeah, I want to do that. I really want people to be more open to having speakers that are different. Many companies and conferences go down that narrow route that we always have this type of speaker. They worked last time, so we'll always do that. I want them to think more expansive. I want to think more about different industries, different types of people where they can learn a lot more. I think it's dangerous to actually find a narrow solution when you're in business. I think you've got to be open to a lot more.
And what's different in your opinion?
Well, so say you're in one industry, say you're, I don't know, I can't think of one, say you're in the pharmaceuticals, you might decide to look at somebody who's an adventurer as opposed to looking for somebody who's an industry specialist. Or you might decide to look at somebody who, I don't know, I'm going blank now, you're putting me on the spot, but to look completely outside. They might look at a retailer. What lessons can we learn from retail? Or what lessons can we learn from a referee? So different, or a judge or something like that. So learn from different people, different environments. I think you can take lessons from other industries and other professions.
Definitely. I mean, a lot of conglomerates, they tend to, like you say, they tend to narrow down on that. They also have the angst that if I motivate my employees too much, they might leave. So maybe I should just stay down this route and just kind of give them what I want to give them.
Yeah, but I think most employees leave because they're not feeling engaged, they're not feeling stretched, they're not feeling that they're developing and learning, or that they're not feeling that they're contributing. If you're giving them all of that within the organization, they're probably less likely to leave. And anybody who's going to go off and do their own thing or leave, I think tends to leave the boss rather than the organization. You join a company, but you leave your boss or you leave your manager. And it's like when you move house, you buy a house, but you leave the neighbors.
Yeah, that's so true. Now, I read somewhere that one of the number one fears in the world is speaking in front of people. Like, that's a major thing. Why do you feel that is? And is it conditioned? Like, are we told from a young age about speaking? So when speakers come to you, are they already spruced up and polished? Or is there still a bit of work to do with them? And share your experience, not necessarily so much the expertise, but the experience, how you've groomed or how speakers have been groomed whilst working with you and whilst you were working with, I've forgotten his name, Alex?
Crywell.
Yes.
Yeah. So speakers that we work with in our bureau, I can't say that every single bureau works in the same way, but the way we work, we tend to take on experts who then happen to speak. Or people who have a profession and then speak, or people who might be sports people who also speak, or adventurers who might speak, or academics who speak. So often they will have already done a fair amount of speaking before they actually come to us. It's rare that we get somebody who hasn't spoken, because often, like a CEO, for example, who's retiring, will have spoken a lot as part of their job, as part of their business. Sports people often have to speak to talk about their achievements. Often will have a bit of media training as well and coaching. So we don't tend to work in the bureau with people who are starting out very often. But where we do help them is if they are trying to develop different topic areas in relation to their expertise, or if they're trying to take a speech and turn it into training or workshops. So we help them with that because that's a very different skill. So I suppose we don't tend to have very many people starting out. We are helping people who are starting out because we've launched very recently a training academy, if you like, for new speakers, which under the banner of Speaking Business. And that's for people who are starting out. It's also for speakers who are perhaps in the industry and are speaking at their conference, at their event, and don't want to be outshone by a guest speaker or a keynote who's coming in.
Wow.
Yeah. Internal speakers at corporates, because often many directors will be speaking on stage and there's the keynote that's coming in that's paid a lot of money. They're going to come in, they're doing a great speech. And that poor internal speaker has to follow them. Do you know what I mean? So then we're supporting that. But the speakers on our bureau books that we're promoting and offering to our clients tend to be already pretty rounded and pretty formed.
I find it really fascinating because the speakers that you mentioned that are already in a profession or they climbed Mount Everest and they've had experiences and then they speak, it's so different to when someone speaks from experience as opposed to someone speaking from theory and putting it into practice and having the framework and then start with this and then go into this and the tonality. And there's all that technical happening with some speakers and other speakers that are being paid £20,000, £25,000. They've got no experience in inverted commas as a speaker, but they're getting paid to speak. Isn't that a bit unfair?
Well, you see, it depends what you're booking your speaker for. Are you booking them to entertain or are you booking for their expertise? Really, you want to have a little bit of both. You want to have both, ideally. But there are occasions where you will book an amazing, incredible speaker who's a fantastic expert who isn't the best speaker. And so you help them by doing a fireside chat, which is a very relaxed Q&A in armchairs, or a panel, or things like that. I mean, I'm sure he won't mind me saying, but Richard Branson doesn't like doing keynote speeches very much. He's a brilliant fireside chat, absolutely fantastic. Put him with an interviewer. He is awesome, off the cuff, eloquent, really engaging. But don't ask him to do a keynote because he doesn't want to. So you don't have to be the best speaker. He's got a great personality. He's got a great story. I would never ask him to do that. Are you with me? But you still get that incredible expertise that only he can bring.
Mm. Mm. What's the number one power tool that every speaker really needs and why?
Oh my goodness. I don't even know what a power tool is. I sort of thinking like a pneumatic drill or something. I don't know. What do you mean by a power tool?
Yeah, maybe it's even a drill. What is their drill? What is their power tool? Is it obviously it's their voice, or is it their personality, or is it their essence, experience?
For me, it's are they relevant? Are they relevant to my audience and my audience's needs? If they are relevant, then I don't think that's a power tool as such, maybe, but
Well, yeah.
So I think you have to be relevant, because you can be the best speaker in the world, but if you're not relevant to an audience that you're trying to get booked with, then there's no point. So there are some fantastic speakers out there that I cannot put on my books or I can't work with, not because they're not brilliant and they haven't got a great message, but they're not relevant to the audience that I'm working with.
And what makes them relevant?
Well, they need to solve a business problem that exists, because my audience are corporates, or they need to help with something that's coming up. So they need to either offer some kind of positive or deal with a problem. So let me give you some examples. Somebody coming who talks about creating an online business. I think one of your speakers was recently creating a 6-figure or 7-figure online business. Really relevant, really brilliant. I listened to that, loved him. Totally relevant to somebody who wants to do that. Now, that won't be relevant to a corporate audience, but he's brilliant.
But they could learn something, because that's then what you were saying, like think a little bit out of the box.
Yeah, I'd have to have him rephrase it and change it and make it relevant for them. He would have to make it relevant for them. Are you with me? So yeah, you're right. You could do that. You absolutely could do that. So they have to make it relevant.
I mean, I interviewed Primoz Bozic, and he's a millennial, so he's young. So in a corporate, it's just kind of like also where the millennials going, because everyone wants to know where the millennials going, because they're going to influence the next generation as well. So how also does the buying decision work when speakers are being booked? Obviously, the corporate's making the decision, but how does that decision get made? And how are you negotiating it all?
It varies from organization to organization, but you will find that generally there isn't one decision maker anymore. I don't know if there ever really was. There tend to be, a lot of people have a lot of input, because often the keynote speaker or the guest speaker or the after dinner or the host or whatever is seen as quite an expense. It's sort of putting a lot of money onto one person usually. So the decision gets taken by several people. I prefer it if the decision is taken quite in a senior place, because then that speaker can align with the objectives of the organization and can ensure that they are delivering a relevant message. I think the further down the line you go, the further away you are to the strategy and to the top people. So I prefer it when it's more senior. Sometimes you do end up being detached and distanced. Sometimes you're distanced even further because you're dealing with an event company rather than the actual client. And then you're having often to ask some very direct questions about, hang on, what is the outcome you're trying to achieve? What is the objective? Where is the organization? What is the audience feeling, thinking? How do you want them to behave after this? And often if it's somebody junior, they don't know that. But we do luckily work with some very good event organizers who really get it and understand the importance of that speaker being aligned. What I find frustrating, I'm going off at all sorts of tangents here, and I'm using this to sort of like get on my soapbox. I find it annoying and disheartening when clients leave the speaker till the last minute. It should be part of the initial thinking, because what happens when you leave that speaker to the last minute, the best fit is probably not going to be available.
That's so true. Yeah. Now, I mean, I can't take Maria down the line for different board meetings and decision making. So what are you leaving with the decision makers when you can't be split into 17 different people to help make that decision or to promote a speaker?
What we try to do when we send a proposal, and I think we're quite good at it actually, so we define 2 really important things for every person that we propose. So we will propose more than one, because people always want a choice. And also, if they're coming early enough, they may not have a date set. So you don't know if the person you're putting forward is going to be available. So you'll give a choice. And so what you tend to do in giving a choice, I always provide links back to our website, because I think on the website, you've got everything that a client will need in terms of having a profile and video clips and topic descriptions and testimonials. That gives them a lot of confidence. But the two things that I think every proposal really requires is, one is, why should I listen to this person? Why have you chosen this person? What is it about them? And secondly, what are they going to do for me and my gig? So those are two things that we try to do in every proposal. What makes it a lot easier for us is if those speakers all have great video. If they don't have great video, it's really hard, unless they are incredibly well known.
Yeah.
Then you can get past that.
What's the deal with Showreels?
Oh gosh, you're going to start me on that. We'll do the whole discussion on Showreels. So, okay, I'm becoming the showreel. I don't know what the word's going to be now, but anyway, the ranter of Showreels. So for me, a showreel is basically the best thing a speaker can have, because it allows the speaker to position themselves in a short video and really put the messages across that they really want to put across. It should stand on its own. So if, I believe what happens in many decision-making processes, that further down the line, the person will do their due diligence, they'll go through absolutely everything in every single detail. And then when they end up with 2 or 3 that they've shortlisted, they'll probably just send the video clips and say, look, the profiles fit, they can talk on the topic, have a look which style you like, have a look who appeals. Now, if you've got a showreel that stands alone and tells that buyer everything, it's a lot easier for them to say, that's the one.
Yeah, because they're already feeling it, definitely.
Yeah. So showreels, I think, a no-brainer. I think people are very bad at doing them for themselves, because it's very difficult for them to sit in the mindset of a booker and think, what should I be putting out there? It becomes a vanity reel sometimes, because I was very funny there and I looked great there, and don't I look slim there? So it can be very difficult. You have to have somebody objective who can look at it and say, actually, this message has to go first. That message is really important. Take that message out. I don't understand that. And that's the value, really, of somebody who knows what they're doing in terms of the booking side for showreels.
Yeah. Well, I find the videos and showreels, or whatever, image videos, much like websites, most tend to be digitalized CV rather than an explanation and giving the feeling of who this person or who this company actually is, and not just a list of what my benefits and features are. And like you said, I look very slim down there. It's like, people are like, I don't care about that. I just want to know, like, what results are you going to give me, and how are you doing it, and how am I going to feel when you're doing all of that? Actually, is there such a demand still for speakers? Because everyone wants to be a speaker and an author. Or is that just my impression?
There is a huge demand for expertise. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm talking about from our side where we sit. There are so many speakers out there. Anybody can be a speaker. There's no barrier to entry. Everybody has a voice. Everybody can talk. I think the challenge is deciding who is a good speaker, who is the right fit. And so really for bureaus, it's great, because that's what we do. We do that legwork for the client to make it easier for them to choose the right match, because there's so much noise out there. And somebody was saying to me, they'd done some analysis, and they were saying there's something like 60,000 speakers, trainers and coaches in the UK alone.
That's not a lot, though.
I thought that was a lot. Because that's professional speakers who speak full time. Now, if you think about it, the speakers we work with aren't people who speak full time. They're people who've got other jobs and then just happen to speak. So if you add that lot in the mix as well, so there's people who are out there who are trying to actually make a living
from speaking,
from only speaking, training and coaching, and that's all they do. That's hard.
What's the population in the UK?
Do you know, I'm not entirely sure at the moment. Should we look it up and then edit it back in?
Yes.
Shall I quickly Google?
Yeah, I'm sure it's like 80 million or 100 million or something.
I think it's around 80, yeah.
But in Germany, something like that. I mean, but 60,000 is then not so much. Consider so there's market.
It is if you're a full-time professional and that's all you're doing. I think it's a fairly big number. Anyway.
So I remember inquiring about a speaker for my event, and I got that price. It was the minimum of $35,000 for them to come and speak. And I think it was only for about an hour and a half, they said, with the whole entourage, the staff and flights and accommodation. How does a corporate justify, or a business justify, the price for the speaker? Like you said, like all this money's being put on, you're banking on this one person to get the results of what? What are these results that they're wanting to get? That people are moved, that they stirred, that they emotionally benefited, or is that a word? Benefited? Well, anyway, now it is. How should one figure out what their prices are, and how is this decided? How is the speaking price decided?
Well, okay, it's a little bit subjective, really, and it's also a matter of sort of demand. If you've got somebody who has a huge fame factor and is very well known, great celebrity in whatever area they're in, whether it's in business or it's media or etc., they're going to carry a higher fee. And if they do very few, they'll carry an even higher fee. If somebody wants to be speaking a great number of times, they'll have a lower fee. But there's a lovely story that someone told me. I don't know if it's an anonymous story, or we'll credit it maybe in the notes if you find out who it was, and I'll see if I can get it right. But the story of a man who had a factory and the main machine went down, and so the whole production line went down, and he had various experts coming in trying to fix it, and nobody could fix it. And then he brought in an expert that he discovered, and this expert walked around the machine, and he had a look here and had a look there, and he spent 15 minutes looking. And then he took a hammer out of his bag and he hit the machine and it started working. And the guy was like, oh, this is fantastic, because the machine hadn't been working for a very long time. And I'm paraphrasing and I'm not telling it right, but we'll get to the point. The point was then he sent his bill, and his bill was for $5,000. And the guy was horrified. Well, he's been there for 15 minutes and his tool was a hammer. So he said, break this down for me. And so he broke it down and he said, cost of hammer, $15 or whatever, knowing where to hit was the rest of the cost. And this is what people are buying when they're buying these really expensive guys. These people are bringing to you, Branson's a great example, he's bringing to you his years and years and years of experience and expertise, and he's giving it to you distilled in a way that you, answering your specific questions in his case, if it's somebody actually preparing a speech, they're preparing a speech for you, all of their expertise, all of their knowledge, all of their wisdom into 1 hour for you and your audience. That's invaluable. And if I've got a company, so if I'm having to justify, if I'm running a corporate, if I'm CEO, if I've got an organization, or even as a small business, do I want to bring somebody in, or do I want the world expert? Do I want the best person in the world that I can get, or the best person in that area, the best expertise to help me in my business? Because the thing that we are all lacking is in time. So if that person, that expert can come in and save me years of learning and making mistakes, that is invaluable. Then, of course, you've got the other end where people are literally buying celebrities in, bringing celebrities in. That's when they want to put bums on seats. So that person is allowing them to get their audience to come in, and it might be a ticketed event, or it might be they just need to have those people there so that they can share a really important message. So sometimes you're buying somebody to put bums on seats for you, and other times you're saying, come and distill your wisdom. Or whatever it is, or come and just make us all feel wonderful. I mean, I remember I used to work with Neil Armstrong a lot when he was here. Wonderful, wonderful man. And he was one of the few people that would actually shake everybody's hand after his speech and have a photograph taken with everybody. He wouldn't write autographs.
The cyclist?
No, Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon.
Oh, Neil Armstrong. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, the cyclist was Lance Armstrong.
Lance Armstrong.
Yeah, Neil. And what happens with Neil, or what used to happen with Neil, was that nobody ever forgets where they got to meet him. And so that organizer of that event will never be forgotten for that reason. And I bet if anybody's listening now and they've Neil Armstrong, they will remember exactly where they met him, exactly who organized it. You can't buy that kind of memory and association.
Yeah.
He was an amazing speaker, by the way.
Oh, I'll have to go into Google and watch him. I want to Google onto YouTube and find some clips to watch of him. So we're nearing the end, and I'd love to know, to give the listeners, for those that are wanting to accelerate speaking, this is like really the thing that they want to be doing. Let's narrow it down 2, 4, 3 things that they need to focus on to get this going, to get on into a speaking bureau, to have a booker, to get into corporates. What are these 2, 3, 4 things that they should be concentrating on heavily?
I think probably the most important one is to really position yourself correctly. Really be sure what is the value that you bring that is relevant to the audience that you're going for. So understand who is the audience that's going to be paying for you, and where is their pain, and how are you helping them. So I think the positioning actually is so important. And many people don't do that. Many people just say, I am so-and-so. This is what I do. And actually, no, hang on a minute. What do you do for me as the buyer? So that's one thing. I also think that a lot of speakers get obsessed with the idea of being listed with a bureau or being listed with an agency. And more often than not, when you're ready, the bureau will come after you. You actually need to get yourself to a certain level before a bureau is interested. We aren't interested in somebody who's just starting out, unless they happen to have just retired as the CEO of something, or they've just come out of being, unless the former prime minister who's etc. that kind of thing. Then yes, of course. So I think you said 3 or 4. What else could I say? Obviously, hone your skills. Absolutely hone your skills. The stagecraft thing, being able to speak, being able to do a good job is really important. Keep learning, keep learning. I suppose that's a good start, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So positioning yourself. I love that. I love that. That's really important. How do you want to change or challenge the world doing what you do?
Goodness gracious. I don't think little old me, and I'm feeling old these days, is going to change the world.
Snap out of it, Maria. Snap out of it.
No. Let me finish. But I'm going to change people's worlds.
Oh.
So I can change the world for a client if they allow me to give them the right expert to solve their problems, if they're open with me and have a really good discussion about where they're at and what they need. I can change a speaker's world by helping them to grow their speaking business. And I hope I changed the world for my team who work for me and with me by giving them a really great business to be part of, because it is a wonderful industry. So I'm not changing the world, I'm changing the world around me, little world.
That's how actually it should be. Can you really change the world? It's more changing yourself that changes those around you.
Well, I don't know, you asked the question.
Yeah. I ask the question and I challenge it. It's just the way it goes. So 3 of my values are creativity, wisdom, and passion. I'd like to know from you, what does creativity mean for you?
Creativity for me is completely and utterly essential. And it's interesting because when we're kids, we're all very creative and we're very playful and we're sort of like, it's drummed out of us and we have to start thinking and learning in a different way. And then as you get older, you realize how important going back to being creative is. And as I'm getting older, I'm actually becoming more and more creative and realizing if there's a problem, if I can apply creativity to it, great. If there's a challenge, if there's an opportunity. So creativity, I think, is vital. It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the better it gets, I think.
Yeah. I like that. Creativity is a muscle. Cool. Wisdom for you is?
Oh my goodness. It's a long journey for me, wisdom. And maturity. I think it's a journey to maturity. And every day I get wiser and wiser. And you know what? The wiser you get, the less you know. It's scary.
Once you get your list. That's so true. Passion for you is?
Well, it's in my blood. I'm Italian. I'm passionate.
No.
I'm passionate at both ends of the spectrum. Passion, good, happy, joyful, and passion, sad, miserable. Somebody said to me once, if I could flatten out my emotions so that I was less passionate in the 2 directions, my life would be a lot easier. And my answer to that is, I would miss the highs.
Yeah. Oh God, I could not imagine my life without all of, like you described now, the passion, that type of passion up and down and all over the place. It's what makes me. Thank you, Maria, for being with us here today and sharing your awesomeness and all about your expertise and your experience and how to accelerate yourself as a speaker and having a speaker bureau. Because our listeners might be listening and going, that's something that I'm passionate about. I don't necessarily want to be a speaker, but I love that part of, because it involves PR, it involves media, it involves negotiation and business, and feel inspired by that. And if you are, then you probably are. Go on to the show notes, have a look. Find Maria, link up with her in social media, in her Facebook group, on her website. Read what her favorite book is, her favorite quote, and get in contact with her. She is awesome. And I'm going to be seeing everybody or listening to everybody and bringing a new guest on next week. And in the meantime, you stay fast and furious and enjoying being the change in the world that you want to see. Thank you, everybody. Love you lots. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. Loved it.
Awesome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Dang, that was just supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I enjoyed having you on board, and please do me and you a favor. Head on over to iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. Click subscribe, and a super bonus, leave your review and you stand a chance of being announced and advertised on the show. I'm always striving to ensure that your brand is uplifted and empowered. Remember, done is better than perfect. So be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and send in your feedback too. You're the absolute best. Keep rocking.